What is up, FA Nation? It's Kevin Tompkins here, back with another Target Report bullet points for Week 14, heading into Week 15. That's right, we are here in the fantasy football playoffs, so now more than ever, we need to get the most actionable information to you to bring to your, hopefully, championship-winning teams in fantasy. And if you like what we're doing, feel free to hit the like and subscribe button down below. It certainly helps us out here at Fantasy Alarm. Without further ado, let's get you right into the most actionable information for Week 15's fantasy playoffs in most leagues. It's been a recurring theme with Rashee Rice throughout this season. With the way Kansas City Chiefs have rotated their wide receiver room, it's been pretty maddening for anybody who drafted Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, or anybody else who isn't Rice. While Moore, Toney, Justin Ross, and almost every other wide receiver in Kansas City has been off the fantasy football radar for the last couple of months, Rice has been slowly solidifying his case as not only the second option behind Travis Kelce, but a worthy fantasy football asset in his own right. Rice had been languishing in his routes per dropback all season until the last 3 weeks, where he's averaged 75% of routes after averaging just 44% of routes per dropback in every previous game before Week 12. Additionally, Rice has averaged 10 targets per game, 8 receptions per game, and 19.1 fantasy points per game in the last 3. It goes perfectly with our thesis earlier in the season, where Rice's targets per route run of 24% in the season-long 2.19 yards per route run before Week 12 singled somebody who should have been earning more time on the field, and now that's exactly what we're getting. Rice is a low-end wide receiver 2 right now, heading into the fantasy football playoffs, and even with the Chiefs' offensive environment taking a hit this season, Rice should be a worthy start in just about every fantasy football league. With Christian Kirk needing surgery for a core muscle injury in Week 13 and being ruled out for the remainder of the season, it's the wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 for the Jacksonville Jaguars outside of Calvin Ridley that's gotten some buzz as to how the veteran Zay Jones and the emergence of Parker Washington would shake out. It turns out it's been one of the easier battles to parse and sort out. Even with the brutally inefficient game against the Cleveland Browns in Week 14, Zay Jones led the team in targets with 14, and when the formations condensed to 2 wide receivers, Jones stayed on the field while Parker Washington left the field. When the Jaguars came out in 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers, Washington was a mainstay in that formation with Ridley and Jones. Jones has run 93% of routes his last 2 games, earning 11 targets per game and averaging a whopping 193 air yards per game. The return from injury for Jones cannot be overstated at this point, as Jones could be primed for a potential late season surge. With Washington as almost a pure slot player, Jones will be on the field in most situations and will benefit with talented teammates like Ridley and Evan Engram receiving more attention from defenses. I'm willing to plug Jones in as a low-end wide receiver 3 or a pretty solid flex for the fantasy playoffs going forward. It's been a rather interesting ride with Odell Beckham, and while we don't want to overreact to a 1-game sample size, Beckham earning 10 targets, 218 air yards, and a 4-catch 97-yard line with a touchdown seems pretty notable in Week 14. Since Mark Andrews has been out of the Ravens lineup, Beckham has averaged over 7 targets per game, 4 receptions, and 82 yards in the last 3 games. His 2.11 yards per route run and 24% targets per route run show his elite per target efficiency, and while the routes per dropback Beckham has or hasn't gotten don't necessarily reflect him getting on the field more to take bigger advantage of it. Beckham has only run 50% of routes in his last 3 games, so that needs to take a bigger bump. But that is why Beckham is nothing more than a flex play in the fantasy playoffs. But seeing what Beckham has done over the past 2 games on a team dying for pass catching help should be the impetus for getting him on the field much more in a prominent role.